Thank you, Madam Clerk. I will call the meeting to order. I'll start off by reading our land acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, and culture of the Anishinaabe, the people of the Three Fires known as Ojibwe, Odawa, Potawatomi nations who have inherited this land from time immemorial, and further give thanks to Chippewa Saugeenes and the Chippewa Nawash, now known as Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. We also recognize the Métis and Inuit whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all its diverse people. Approval of the agenda. Is there any add-ons to our agenda here today? Seeing none. The recommendation is that the agenda be approved as presented. Someone to move to put it on the floor, please. Moved by Scott, second by Sue. Is there any discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none. All in favor? Go ahead, Scott. Any questions? Go ahead. Turn the button on the side.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just in regards to the agenda, when we get to the recommendation, I think it's number 8. Just wondering if we could divide that into 2 questions.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. One being the Aqua 5-year agreement, and the other being moving ahead with option B. So have the 2 separated questions, please.
Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Mayor Mackey. When we get to that item, we'll have a motion to amend to remove it into 2 pieces.
Thank you.
Okay, so Madam Clerk, should I read the motion to amend as amended?
Please move the motion to approve as presented, and we'll amend the motion accordingly when we get to that agenda item.
All right, that was the motion that was on the floor. Then all show of hands, all in favor. The motion is carried. Okay, moving on our agenda, declaration of interest. You can clear anytime you see fit during the meeting. Minutes of the previous minutes. The recommendation is that the minutes of the BioGRID Joint Board of Management meeting held on January 17th, 2022 be approved. Someone to move, put it on the floor, please. Moved by Brian, second by Scott. Any discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none, show of hands, all in favor. The motion is carried. We have no delegations here today. We have a piece of correspondence from BDO Audit Planning Report for information. Is there any questions on the BDO report? Seeing none. So I'll move on to the agenda. We're now down to staff reports. Now, Madam Clerk, shall I read the motion that's presented? Okay. I have a recommendation here that the study report titled Source Separating Organic Availability Discussed Digestion Technologies and Beneficial Use of Biogas attached to this report as Appendix A be received, and that the information contained within Appendix Study Report be referred for review of requirements to support option 1B of the report, and that the information contained within the appendix study form the base of future planning purposes for BioGRID, and that the BioGRID Joint Board of Management direct staff to enter negotiations with Ontario Clean Water Agency, Aqua, to operate the Derby BioGRID facility for a 5-year term with an option to renew for an additional 5-year term at the discretion of the joint board. Someone to move to put on the floor, please. Moved by Sue, second by Brian. Now, Madam Clerk.
So Mayor Mackey has indicated his intent to remove the second item, or the last line, I guess I should say, as a separate motion. So Mayor Mackey has moved that. We will need a seconder to separate the 2.
For the amendment.
Correct.
Who is second by Sue?
And all in favor?
All in favor? The motion is carried, so it's
Thank
now
you.
separated.
That's correct. So we will commence discussions on the first half of the motion, being those related to the study, and then get to the discussions regarding the 5-year agreement.
Okay. So we'll carry on then with, I believe, Mr. Dolmer, you're going to present the report, or Madam CEO?
Thank you, Chair Burley. No, I'll start out just giving a bit of an overview of the report. I will invite my colleague, CAO Cinnamon, to make any comments, and if there are technical questions, then Mr. Dahlmeyer is also available. I might start out with what we know. And what we know is that our 2 townships have some important assets, but they should be better optimized. They haven't been optimized to their fullest to date. We know pending legislation will require municipalities to divert organic waste from landfill. We know that. These assets that we have will support that requirement for waste diversion from landfill. These assets have the potential to support diversion requirements beyond our 2 townships. So there are other local municipalities, even broader municipalities, that are quite interested in what's going on in our 2 townships. There's industry that is very interested in what's going on with our BioGRID assets. We have the potential to support some research and development efforts that's going on in the waste management, waste diversion area. Also climate mitigation. These are important assets when we're looking at diverting organics from landfill. What's really interesting is we have the assets, albeit underutilized, and we're further ahead than many other municipalities out there. I think I've shared in the past that my former municipality is building a $14.5 million source separated organics facility. So this is something that municipalities have to pay attention to. The recommendation before you related to the feasibility study is to put a plan in place where we can demonstrate the value of these assets if we increase the hours of operation, increase the volume of feedstock that can go into them, and where the capital investment can be incremental. So the option 1B is really taking the status quo, making some improvements where we can expand those hours, we can burn off excessive methane properly and do proper odor control, and we can increase the volume of feedstock going in. So that's the recommendation around the feasibility study. Mr. Mayor, I was going to address the recommendation around single sourcing. I don't know if you want me to do that at this point or have discussion on that first part of the recommendation and then the single sourcing afterwards.
Patty, do you have any comments on that first part first?
There we go. Yeah, need the red light. Thank you, Chair Burley. I had an opportunity to meet with CAO Fletcher a couple of weeks ago and had a conversation about the feasibility report. It was extremely well done. In terms of Chatsworth Council, they have not had a chance to review the report as yet. It was appropriate to come to the board first. So, whatever the board decides, and then we will schedule discussion from Chatsworth's perspective at our April the 6th meeting. But I think as I say, the report was well done. It was lots of good information, and where we go from here, I know that our council is looking forward to some conversation about that as well. So.
Thank you, Patty. I understand that Madam CEO from George and Bus, we're going to probably try and schedule a joint meeting with both councils.
Through you, Chair Burley, that is correct. So to CAO Cinnamon's comments, there are discussions that Chatsworth needs to have I know our council has had the feasibility study, but we think it would be valuable to have both councils meet together. We are partners in these assets. So I would turn to our clerk. I believe we're looking at early to mid-April potential joint meeting of both councils. Thank you.
Okay. Do we, Madam CEO, do you want to continue on with your report, or would you like the board to address it first? Scott, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And I appreciate that we're going to try and get a joint meeting. Just wondering if that joint meeting could be an evening meeting. We have a couple members of council that have day jobs, and evening meetings seem to be easier for them to attend. So if I make that request, please.
Through you, Chair Burley, we can accommodate reviewing an evening meeting.
Would you prefer to have it in George and Bluff's office since it's better roads, or no?
Through you, Chair Burley, we'll look for a venue that will accommodate 12 council members, some staff, and potentially members of the public as well.
Mr. Chair, if we had the meeting in the Katie Arena, then George and Bluff would get the opportunity to travel through a portion of Chatsworth roads.
Well, I believe the snow's going, so that may happen. So do we want to let CEO continue on with her report?
Thank you, Chair Burley. I will address the recommendation to approach the current operator with a longer term potential contract. When we look at single sourcing, it's usually because there is benefit to the municipality. And so in this case, looking at how we proceed moving forward with these important assets, we see benefit to both townships, at least in the short term. And short term, we're talking about that 5-year window. The current operator has specialized expertise in wastewater and waste diversion, particularly organics. Because they've been contracted to step in for the last couple of months, familiarity with these specific assets as well.
Sorry, Madam CEO, I seem to be seeing a few frowns from Mayor Mackey. I wonder if that part of that discussion should be done once we put the other motion on the floor. If you don't mind.
Through you, Chair Burley, it is completely up to the board.
Because that is a good discussion should happen with that motion and
Sure.
So
My intent was just to explain why we had put the recommendation.
No, I understand that. I just, Hubby, if you don't mind, Madam CEO, we'll have that discussion when we have put that motion on the floor. Now, going back to your original opening remarks concerning the option 1B, does the board want to discuss that? Okay? So the floor is open for any discussion. Scott, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. First, I appreciate George and Bluff sharing the report with us. It was it's certainly a valuable report, and it was encouraging to see that there are both companies and municipalities that are interested in the work that we put into the biodigester. I guess I'm only speaking, this is my position right now, and as Patty has indicated, our council hasn't had an opportunity to, go over the report, but based on our council's position in the past has been that, we've put about as much money into the biodigester as we're willing to do, recognizing that there's other opportunities. The parts in here about continuing to explore other partners and what that would look like, I guess I'm having a hard time justifying putting any more money into ourselves until we have secured those other partners. Recognizing that others are seeing the value in that facility, why wouldn't they be the ones making the investment? Both George and Bluffs and Chatsworth have made significant investments over the last 11 or 12 years. And we were probably ahead of the game. You know, if hindsight is 2020, we were likely ahead of the game. But that being said, we may be in a really good position now to have an asset. You know, in the past, the joint board and the councils, you know, did look at partners to actually take over the facility. I'm not sure, you know, where both councils sit now and whether they want to, you know, sell the facility, whether they want to look at joint partners. I think that's a really good discussion for the two councils to have. You know, former discussions at our council have been, we would like to relieve ourselves of the biodigester itself. The certainly the lagoon is something that, you know, our municipality has a real interest in, as far as having a spot for residents to take their septage. As a rural municipality, we don't have the same need for source separate organic disposal as, you know, the city of Owen Sound or other built up residential areas. Most of the lots that we have that are in our villages are larger lots, and people can, you know, use a composter, and the vast majority of the people in our municipality live, you know, rurally, and you know, they utilize fence rows or chicken coops or whatever the case may be. So I'm hard pressed right now to support investing any more dollars from the township of Chatsworth. That's my thoughts right now, but I look forward to, you know, discussion, you know, around that topic and around, you know, what both municipalities see going forward, you know, for that site. I don't know how, you know, we're 50% owner. I don't know how selling shares, or we don't really have shares, but how do you divest yourself of some of the responsibility, maintaining partial ownership? Do you get out of it completely? You know, does one partner get out of it completely? I don't know the answers to that, Mr. Chair, but I think those are answers that we certainly need to come up with.
Thank you, Mayor Mackey. We all respect your comments, good comments, and these are the kind of discussions I think a board needs to have. It was an excellent report. Yes, it was paid for by Georgian Bluffs, and we did share that report with our partner because that's extremely important that we work together. So that's why we did it. But one of the big things that I got out of this option B is very simply is that, as is indicated by our CAO and in the report, the biodigester sort of stalemate. It can't really move forward. One of the key things that we need to be able to get this biodigester going, and it's always been a constant stumbling block for the operators, is not having a flare on site, because you get good product in and you start building the gas up in the biodigester, and they have to be very cautious not to go overboard, because there's no way of getting rid of that excess gas, whereas a flare takes that danger, it's gone, because if you produce more gas than what you can use at the time, you can flare it off. And I think that's the most important thing we have to realize, that on the original design of this biodigester, there was a flare in it, but it was taken out for some God knows reason. We're where we are now, and it's a necessary must in order to be able to get the biodigester to move forward in a way we all think it needs to be. Our CEO indicated it's one of the probably the most prominent climate action thing in this whole area, that biodigester, for all municipalities, Chatsworth, Georgian Bluffs, Owen Sound, whoever, to be able to use that when you start thinking about climate action, stuff like that. We've always hinted to discuss this, Mayor Mackey, about maybe you don't have, Chatsworth, if you don't feel you and your council want to put any more money into it, but again, that'll be a council decision, your council, my council, so I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm just saying that you had indicated that maybe you want to get out of the biodigester business. If that's what the two councils agree upon, that Chatsworth wants to stay out and George Bus wants to stay in. I really feel that's the kind of conversations we should start going down that road, talking that way then. And if George Bus wants to stay in the bio business, fine, so it. Let's talk to Chatsworth. How do we let Chatsworth leave? And maybe we can bring in another partner that wants to work with it. For instance, maybe the City of Holmestown wanted to come in and take over your spot. And as for you, Chatsworth, being able to use the goons and so on, anything's possible. We just need to sit down and have that discussion with the proper people to put us in the right direction to be able to do that. I don't know if the board today is going to be able to make a decision. We are a 4-member board, and we have 2 against and 2 for. We're not going anywhere. So I'm wondering if we should have our conversation today and everybody speak their minds. And if we might not be able to move it forward today until we had the joint meeting with both councils. If both councils, I'm quite sure we're growing up enough, we can sit down and have a real good conversation. But the bottom line is when we get both councils together, let's be truthful to each other, either in or out. If you want out, we can have those discussions to go down that road. And I really hope that we'd have the conversations that what is the best benefit for both municipalities, Chatsworth and George Bluffs. If Chatsworth wants out, make sure the Chatsworth are happy with the end result when they get out. That's extremely important. And it's important for George and Bluffs to be able to, if Chatsworth wants out, to give us the opportunity to start negotiations with another partner if we decide to go in. And maybe I'm speaking way out of turn as chair, but I'm just telling you what I feel is that for us as a board to sit here today and say we're going to vote on option 1B and so on, I can't see it happen because I just really feel it's going to be a tie vote. Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I would agree. Personally, I feel I want to see George and Bluff stay in it, but I can't speak for the rest of council. But I would think maybe what would be a good thing if Chatsworth wants to be out of it, to define what that looks like. What dollar value are you going to want someone else to pay you for it? Are you going to retain part ownership or contract for services at the lagoon? And exactly what Chatsworth would need. And my suggestion would be that your council have those discussions and bring that back to the joint meeting. And that would also allow our council to maybe have some talks about what are we seeing going forward as well. And that way, when we come back together as both councils, we've got some initial starting points to work from, would be my suggestion anyway.
That's an excellent suggestion, Deputy Mayor, but I caution our board that we have an upcoming election coming very soon. We do have a very tight time frame to be able to react in a way to look after this. So just keep that in the back of your mind. And I really feel that I would hope that before the election day comes and before we maybe get into lame duck anybody, that we would have some kind of a decision from these 2 councils that are in power that this is the way we want to move forward in this direction instead of leaving it limbo until our next council. That's what I feel. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think you have a very valid point. I think it's a very tight frame here. We have time frame that we're looking at. And we have not had the discussion amongst our own council, and that has to happen. But I know that the mayor and I have a strong feeling of what they're thinking and deciding. So, I like the idea of, we have to hear from them and then we'll come back and make that.
Thanks, Brian. I'm just wondering, I look for the experts out in the audience, the CAOs and so on. Would it be appropriate to try to schedule a joint meeting sometime in early April, but maybe before that, it would give an opportunity for both councils to have a discussion amongst ourselves, and then both councils are coming together after talking to each other to see and maybe then your councils would make up their minds what direction you want to go. And I think it'd be a very productive meeting. Patty?
Just prior to the commencement of the meeting today, the three of us were talking about some potential dates. Our council next meeting is April the 6th, and we were looking at, I believe it was Monday, April the 11th,
For the joint meeting.
for a joint meeting.
Yeah, well, but yeah, by all means, I think it's great that the staff will pick a date and put a doodle pool thing out to both councils, and hopefully we can come up with a date. Scott, go ahead.
Good Roads, Mr. Chair, is on April 11th,
Oh, man.
and I will be
Yes.
I'm attending that.
Yeah, it's from the 10th on, isn't it?
What I was going to say, what about the Friday?
I guess through the board, leave it with us. We will look for a date later on in that week. And as you say, poll the members that will be impacted by scheduling this meeting.
And if necessary, we could call a special call meeting during that week if necessary. That's probably what it would be anyway, eh?
It will be in the second week of April, yes.
No, it'd be a special call meeting.
Correct.
Yeah.
So the 14th is county council and the 15th is Good Friday.
Scott?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering, I know it's going to be difficult to try and the 7th, which is the Thursday prior to the Easter weekend or the weekend before. I'm just wondering the evening of the 7th, if it works here, it may work.
Well, like I say, I think we'll leave it up to staff and see if they come up with an idea and send a doodle pool out to both councils, and hopefully we get consensus. If one council member on either council can attend, it's not necessarily reason to cancel the meeting. It's just hopefully that everyone can attend, but some of us can't, some of us can't. Anyway, I hate I didn't want to change anything around, but I just felt that we need to have this discussion because we're not really going to go too far here today with Zomchain. Madam CEO from Georgian Bus.
Thank you, Chair Burley. And good discussion. I mean, the report before you today was presented in a manner that assumes that the partnership is as it is today moving forward. So if we need to have different discussion, that's very fair. I think we'll leave that discussion. We'll also go away, take away just looking at the agreement and familiarizing ourselves with our partnership. The one thing that I would ask of the board, though, is we would request direction to extend the current operating agreement for 2 more months. And the reason for that was, again, we had contracted an operator for a couple of months, intending to get before the board and councils. It's very fair that we need to defer for further discussion, but we do need somebody operating that biodigester. So with the board's direction, we will extend their contract for till the end of May.
I was wondering, Madam CEO, that contract is fairly pricey going from month to month. I'm wondering, would the board be receptive to negotiate a contract with Aqua for a 5-year term and make sure we have escape clauses in there that if ownership changes or something happens, to be able to get out of the contract? It's just that we may get a better rate in a 5-year option versus going month to month, what we're basically doing.
Through you, Chair Burley, I mean, it is no doubt that a month-to-month contract is much more costly than a longer-term contract. So we will take direction from the board. That was one of the reasons why we were suggesting a 5-year term with options to renew, but we will take direction from the board.
All I'm thinking is that as long as we put in the proper escape clauses in there, the 5-year contract is really immaterial in the sense that we get a better rate. But if as discussions go on, things change. Mostly the escape clauses. Scott, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So my first point is I appreciate the frank conversation in regards to both municipalities' positions, and I look forward to having that discussion with the two councils. I think it's well timed that we had that meeting. There's been frustrations from both parties, with the current contract and maybe the direction of the two municipalities. When I see this report, I see the biodigester and the lagoon, like they're separated out. So that may be part of the discussions, Chatsworth and George and Bluffs, jointly, as we have in the past, look after the maintenance and the routine maintenance of the lagoon.
Could be.
The biodigester could be, something that one municipality, looks for partners. So I think there's lots of options there, but I do believe this is the time to have those discussions, and hopefully, as you indicated, a decision could be made by these councils before lame duck does occur. In regards to the AQUA, I agree with you. I think we could enter into a 5-year term with them as long as there is the proper escape charges. I think it would be cheapest for us. Irregardless of where we go with the biodigester, we're going to need an operator. Whether or not Chatsworth is involved with the lagoon or not, the next hopeful partners would need an operator. I think, reading between the lines, I think AQUA may have some interest in that site. I don't know if that's the case, but they certainly run other biodigesters and may have some interest up the road. But I certainly would like to see, irregardless of, I certainly support, our staff trying to enter into a contract with AQUA for 5 years, as long as there's the proper escapes, that whoever the future owners may be have an opportunity, if they wish to change, who's operating, have that ability. So
I think both staff from both municipalities can look at that contract and come up with a very good, sound contract that we can, if necessary, remove ourselves from it, but also get the advantage of having them to run the municipality or the bio for another 5 years. Do I need a motion, Madam Clerk, for that, or how do you want to do it?
So we have some procedural catching up to do. I've been sitting here just waiting. So prior to entering this discussion, we did separate out the motion into two parts. So I'm hearing that the second motion will likely generally be supported, being that of the entering into the negotiation with the 5-year term. But with that being said, I'm left with the impression of this board that you're not prepared to make a decision either way on the first half of that motion being option 1B, etc.
That's correct.
So it sounds as though there may need to be a motion to defer that motion, being the first portion of the motion on the floor prior to the amendment, to the joint board or the joint council discussion. So we will need a mover and a seconder for the deferral, and then we can move to the second portion of the motion.
Okay, it was moved by Brian, second by Sue, that we defer that motion. All in favor? The motion is carried.
Thank you. So now we're on to the second portion of the motion, which is the 5-year term.
Before I put the motion on the floor, Madam Clerk or CAO, the last part of the motion says an option to renew for additional 5 years. Will we leave that in there too?
Through you, Chair Burley, I always, I would recommend leaving it in there. What that says to the operator is there is the potential for longer term. They have to perform well in the first part, but it is at the discretion of the joint management board. And should the joint board change its composition, I think we would just amend that based on whatever the new composition is.
Thank you. And might I suggest before we pass that motion, Madam Clerk, that once staff, excuse me, are confident they have a contract that has got plenty of escape clause in there, have it run by legal too before it's put out.
Through you, Chair Burley, that would be absolutely our intention.
And then that response could go back to both councils that It's been checked and just a comfort level. Okay. Now, do I need to read this last part of this motion again, or Madam Clerk, have you got another motion?
Nope, I don't have another motion. It's up to your colleagues if you need to read it again. Otherwise, we just need a mover and a seconder and a vote.
Scott? Okay, moved by Scott, second by Sue. If everyone's happy with the motion before us, show of hands, all in favor? It's carried. Do we, Madam Clerk, do we need anything in there saying staff will negotiate a new agreement, or is that just?
That's reflective in that motion.
Okay, all right. The biggest thing we all have to realize, as the chair of the buyer board, Mayor George and Boss, Mayor Mackey, our commitment from George and Boss is that we're going to sit down and have sensible conversations, and it's for the benefit of both municipalities. Regardless, if you decide to go down a different road than us, we're still neighboring municipalities and we're always going to get along. We've had a great relationship and it will continue no matter what you do. Okay? Scott?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Appreciate those comments, and we feel exactly the same. I think there will be a solution that is beneficial for both parties. We just need to work that out. I was just reading the resolution that we just passed, and should it say up to a 5-year term? It says negotiate a 5-year term. I'm just wondering if our CAOs want any wiggle room to negotiate up to a 5-year term. Is there any benefit in discussing 2, 3, 4 years, 5? Right now, it is only a 5-year term. I'm just wondering if there would be benefit or flexibility to up to a 5-year term.
MCO?
Through you, Chair Burley, it's actually a good suggestion because the operator may have ideas as well. So I think allowing that flexibility of up to a 5-year term with an option to renew is a good suggestion. Thank you.
So, Madam Clerk, do we need to revise the motion, or?
I would classify that as a quote unquote friendly amendment. So we will take the direction of the board to simply process that in the back end.
Okay. Well, that was easy. We shall move forward then with our agenda. Public question period. Has there been any public question? No. We've no unfinished business. We've no new business. We've no closed session. Our next meeting will be the call of the chair. I assume our next meeting probably be a joint meeting with two councils, but anyway. So I need a motion to adjourn. Moved by Brian. Second by Sue. Show of hands, all in favor of adjournment. We're now adjourned. Thank you, everybody.